All right, and we're live.
And we're live! Yay! Finally! A little late.
With our very clean cat today. This has been my baby all day.
This thing is good, because it's a beautiful dog. It's the soup sort of
So,
love. It's a pee-pee
what, oh, let me move this over. What do you think of the title?
Pettigrew,
the ladies' man.
Hey,
Cause, yeah, I mean, he's killing it.
he is. Desdemona Lewis.
And the first one of the Marauders. Hey, Dan!
Welcome, Dan. Welcome.
Yeah, the first one of the Marauders to
Get that
Schnog.
keys. Get that keys. Speaking of, I need to pull up the story.
Yes, please. Hey, Lucas. How's it going?
Oh, hey, welcome, welcome.
Ah, thank you. I thought it was pretty good. Considering the last chapter we read, where Sirius and Lupin were, I guess they weren't jealous because, oh, they don't know what the big deal is about girls.
Yeah, they don't get it.
So there's some big foreshadowing. I mean, what teenage boy doesn't get it?
Hi, Katie.
Hello,
Welcome.
Katie.
All right, where are we? Is it
We're
this
happy
one?
you made it too, Lucas.
Yep. All right.
Yes, someone else in chat. Yeah, our weekend chats are much more lively than our weekday chats. I think it's because we do it later and everyone's kind of tired.
Probably. It's during the week, too. People need to go to bed so they can get
Yeah.
up for work and stuff. And I think we need to be on the Insta, though, more regularly and post the times so people remember. We need to be more professional.
That's true. I know, I haven't posted anything on there in a while.
I know. Insta's hard just because...
I started doing like little book reviews and stuff of the books I was reading. I should start doing that again. I really haven't finished anything yet. I've been jumping between like 3 books and I haven't finished one yet.
I need to finish the last Warrior Cats book because I've read the first 6 and then I've read the next 5 and I just have one more to finish this saga. And then I'm done with the first 2 sets of Warrior Cats books. And then I have like 3 standalone Warrior Cats books. I've got the His Dark Material series now that Noelle got me for Christmas. I have a book on ancient marine reptiles. I have another one about the big cat fossil record.
5 hours later.
Yeah, there's
It's
a
still
lot.
going.
Yeah.
Oh,
Plus reread Harry Potter for the Ring Theory videos. Plus read A Song of Ice and Fire. Just and whatever we're reading for the book club. So just lots.
So yeah, a lot of books on the backlog. And yes, Katie, we know. It's like what 1, 2 in the morning when the
Yeah,
stream starts. We
so late
understand.
for her. Yeah, we get that.
You'd be up all night if you stayed.
We should hear about Sirius's prank on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Soon.
It's getting to be that time, isn't it?
Year 5 is next, and
dun dun dun.
Year 4 is almost over. So
yeah,
we're getting there. So yeah. Should I dive right in? Should we start?
Yeah, let's just start.
Unless you have a question for me.
No, I don't.
No question.
I guess my question was, how did you like the title?
The title's good.
And it was good.
Oh. What are our thoughts on India?
I mean, I would love to visit there. I'm a big foodie. So I would love to go to India just to try all the different food there.
What about India? Like, in general, what do I think about India?
I mean, you got leopard. They're Indian leopards, right?
Yes, there are Indian leopards.
Yeah, so right there, she wants to go.
Yes. And the Asiatic lion population. Also, tigers.
Yeah.
Bengal tigers.
That's right.
Yeah, tigers. The Sundarban tiger population is one of the most famous tiger populations.
So yes, India. You like it.
Also, food. Also, Oh my God, the spiritual, cultural history.
That is another one.
Just for that alone.
It's one of those places you can go and it's not all modernized. There's so much like architecture, and the design of everything is just so beautiful and original.
Well, there seems to be a clash because India has, their economy has just like
That's true.
jump started and steamrolled and been like going.
Right?
But then you have 5,000 years of history,
right?
there.
And like, I'm happy for them that their economy is booming, but I see that they're gonna be like Japan, you know, where it's like it's gonna be very modern, and then you're gonna have the little sections that still preserve the traditions, which will be good for India. But right now, it's just there's so much beauty with the past culture and architecture and everything.
When I was going through the foreign exchange program, we had to pick the top 5 countries that we wanted to go to.
Yeah.
Russia was number 1.
Mm-hmm.
India was number 2. So I almost went to India.
I would have went to India over Russia any day. It's so great. And yes, the street food.
I can imagine the street food.
Oh. Anytime I watch any show where people like visit India, that's like the first thing they mention.
I know, they walk through the markets and stuff. Oh, I know, the food always looks so good.
I want to go to India next.
Yeah. Russia was
such a beautiful country.
Russia was important to me, and I'm glad I went to Russia. I absolutely loved Russia. And I'm glad I went, and I would go back. Maybe not right now.
Yeah.
But I would love to go back someday. To go back to Russia. But yeah, India definitely has always been. It is crowded. That I think is the one thing that would probably be hard for me to personally deal with.
I was gonna say,
crowding might give me a little anxiety.
I deal with it. It's worth it.
I deal with it, but I'd have to adjust.
Yeah.
I think I would need to adjust. But yeah, I would love to go. Absolutely. Sorry, I wanted to sip.
Oh, no worries. Really? You really sparked some enthusiasm in Scott now. That was great.
I know we got excited because now we want to go to India, and we can't go anywhere.
Now we're on a tangent, but oh man,
where else do we want to go? Oh yeah, right. Well, Katie and I are going to go to Japan someday.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean,
you can come.
I'll be tagging along.
Come if you want.
Oh yeah.
You know what, Katie? I actually thought about this the other day. When we do go to Japan, I'll have lost a significant amount of weight by then.
Mm-hmm.
But Katie and I will fit everywhere because we're not tall people.
I won't.
But you're going to be banging your head on everything. And we might be, like, if we have to take a train and you're with us, like, you may not be able to sit.
That's fine.
But then you're going to have to stand like this in the car.
That's fine, as long as I don't...
I'm just saying it's going to be a thing.
As long as you don't have to strap me to the roof, I'm good.
Okay. Especially the bullet train. Yeah, no.
I mean, that'd be kind of cool, though.
No, your skin would, like, rip off your face.
It'd be like, I'd feel like I'm skydiving.
Oh, God. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Almost got me.
Oh,
almost.
Never gonna let you down.
Okay, you did it to me. You had to do it. All right. Are we ready?
Can't resist.
Okay.
Can't resist a good Rickroll. That was my generation growing up. Come on.
I told you the radio Rickrolled me the other day.
That's great.
It did. I was driving home from work.
So what are we on?
Chapter 70.
70.
We're getting there, guys.
What year?
Year 4.
What year is it?
Still year 4. But we're almost done with year 4.
We're in May 29th.
Chapter 70. 4th year. Partings.
No, I just love it. The chat just went
full out.
Yeah, just rickrolled us. The chat just rickrolled us.
Yes, it did. Thursday, 29th of May, 1975. The exam period seemed to fly by that year. Remus really felt as though he'd got into the swing of things for the first time and, though he didn't like to rest on his laurels, was relatively certain he'd achieved decent marks all round. Even potions had been less stressful than usual thanks to Lily's careful guidance and patient coaching throughout the year. In fact, by the third week of May, Remus found himself at something of a loose end. He'd completed all of his tests, but none of his friends had. Between Muggle studies and divination, the Marauders and the girls were still cloistered away studying in the exam hall. But he was far from lonely. Remus spent his free time taking leisurely walks on the grounds, reading whatever and whenever he liked, and putting the finishing touches to his greatest accomplishment, the Marauders Map. It had been almost 4 years in the making, but Remus's rudimentary map of Hogwarts had expanded
Wait, we already read this, didn't we?
Did we?
This was the chapter we read, I thought.
Oh, it needed a locking spell. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, we did read this one. Sorry, guys.
I was gonna say.
Sorry, my bad.
We're further than we thought.
I know.
71. Yes, see, Luke.
Yeah, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
We caught it.
We got it. Sorry, guys. Let's try that again. Katie's like, I had no idea. No clue. Chapter 71. 4th year. June. This is a fanfic. It is the greatest of all time. Although My Immortal was pretty fantastic.
That was great for other reasons. This is great because it's just good.
Yeah, that's
My
true.
Immortal was great because it was just so bad. But it's awesome you finally made it to a stream.
Yes. You, Braxton, just saying, your comments are awesome. I love them. I am so excited every time you comment because they're always very thoughtful. They make me think. And I just enjoy them. Just had to get that out there. I really like them. All right. Let's try this again.
All right.
Saturday, 28th of June, 1975. Hi, Remus. Lily startled him as he was leaving the hospital wing. He'd just had his final checkup with Madame Pomfrey before school ended. Hello, he said nervously. What are you doing here? Dropping these off for Professor Slughorn. She raised a large jar of something that looked like purple frog spawn. We've been doing healing potions in Slug Club this term. Wait here, I'll walk back with you. She disappeared inside the infirmary and he waited, trying not to look too suspicious. He hated being seen near the hospital. Lily finally came out with a breezy smile. Thanks. Thanks. What were you doing in there? Oh, nothing. A hex that went wrong. Oh gosh, what happened? I'd rather not say. He raised an eyebrow suggestively, hoping that she would get the picture. Fortunately, her mind went elsewhere. Was it Potter again? He hexed Sev last week with something that made his neck swell up like a life ring. Yeah, James is good at engorgement charms. Remus grinned.
Oh man, they had to throw in a joke like that somewhere.
Well, I wouldn't have thought he'd hex the people who are supposedly his friends, Lily replied primly. It wasn't him, Remus replied, annoyed. He was not keen to badmouth James in front of Lily after the mix-up back in January. Black, then, Lily shrugged. He's just as bad. No idea why everyone fancies him. So, big plans for the summer? Lily changed tact, perhaps realizing that Remus didn't particularly enjoy her tirades on the other Marauders. Nah, Remus shook his head. Usual stuff, probably. Homework. You? I'm going to visit Marlene in July. We're trying to get Mary to come. How is she? Mary had been absent from every meal since the big breakup and had barely left the girls' dorm as far as Remus could tell. Better, Lily nodded sadly. She can go a few hours without crying, anyway. Keeps playing depressing Dusty Springfield albums, though. They reached the portrait of the fat lady and bumped into Peter. And Desdemona Lewis, of course. They were in a tight embrace, arms wrapped round each other, murmuring between kisses. I'll miss you, she sighed. I'll miss you more, Peter said. Will you write? Every day. Remus made loud retching noises, which made Lily giggle, but earned a furious frown from Peter. They quickly climbed through the portrait and left the lovebirds to it. Gryffindor Tower was complete anarchy when they reached it. As was usual on the last day of term. Students crawled under tables looking for lost things, ran round collecting up cards and game pieces. Shouts of "Accio left trainer" or "Accio wristwatch" rang out as everyone scrambled to pack up at the very last minute. Remus couldn't help but wonder whether every common room was undergoing the same pandemonium. Surely the organised Ravenclaws were in a much better state. I don't know, Katie. What do you think happens in the Ravenclaw dormitory?
They're so smart. They know where everything is. They don't need the Accio spell.
You think so? Think they're more organized than the Gryffindors?
Oh, yeah. Much more.
What about the Slytherins? What do you think they're doing?
I don't know. I'm worrying about their own stuff and not anyone else's.
Probably. This isn't mine, Chuck. This isn't mine, Chuck. What about the Hufflepuffs? They're probably
they're
just
all
as
helping each other pack. Like, oh no, let me do that for you.
Yeah, it's probably disorganized, but they're probably helping each other.
Yes.
Unlike the Gryffindors, that's just chaos.
I'm just waiting to hear what Desdemona's name is for Pettigrew, though. Like 1-1.
1-1. Okay. Sirius and James were not doing much to help the process. They were covertly levitating various items from behind one of the larger armchairs, snickering to each other happily. Remus smiled, thinking again how much he would miss everything. "You too!" Lily scolded them, marching over, holding her own wand up. Sirius laughed and ducked behind James. "Come on, Evans, just a bit of last day high spirits." "Why can't you just leave people be, Black?" "Why can't you just leave us be?" he retorted, firing green sparks at the ceiling away from James's back. "You're not a prefect yet, you know." "Oh, just wait till I am," she said, trying to throw a jinx at Sirius. It hit James instead, and turnips immediately began sprouting from his ears, the shocked expression on his face so comical that Remus collapsed into giggles. "Well, that wasn't so goody-goody," Sirius laughed, transfiguring a nearby lamp into a flock of birds, which fluttered screeching across the room, adding to the chaos. Lily's next move was to shoot a jelly-legs jinx at James, causing him to fall to the floor in a heap, still clutching his turnip ears. With him out of the way and Sirius exposed, Lily disabled him with a binding spell, then turned to Remus. "Help me sort all this out, will you?" "Okay, fine," Remus sighed, still wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. Together they managed to restore the common room to order, de-transfigure the lamp, repair the singe marks on the ceiling, and calm down a wailing first year who'd lost her cat. Lily left Remus to handle James and Sirius, who were in a real state now. "Isn't she marvelous?" James grinned dopily as Remus tried to help him into a nearby chair, his legs still unsteady, folding underneath him. "Yeah, real charmer," Sirius grumbled, struggling to get free from his body bind. "You two are just lucky she only used her power for good," Remus chastened them. "You'd be no match for her if she decided to really start breaking the rules. Finite." He pointed his wand at Sirius, who was finally released. He rubbed his arms fiercely. "Can't believe you helped her, Moony." "Of course I did," Remus shrugged. "I'm terrified of her."
Is Lily the most powerful marauder?
Not marauder.
She's an honorary marauder.
An honorary marauder.
And just while we pause for a second, yes, Katie says something. For someone who claims to not like James, Lily likes to talk about him. Accurate. I think we're seeing Lily start to come around.
I think so. She's definitely
She learned that she has no chance with Lupin, so she's going to her backup plan.
I guess so. Yeah. Sunday, 29th of June, 1975. "Oh, you two will miss the train," Remus huffed, climbing the stairs to their dorm for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Their trunks had already been transported down to Hogsmeade Station by some magical mechanism, and McGonagall had given the 10-minute warning, but James and Sirius had vanished again. He found them sitting on James's bed, which was stripped of bedclothes, heads bowed over something small Sirius was holding cupped carefully in his hands. The room felt horribly hollow and empty without all of the Marauders' things in it. The two black-haired boys turned to him as they entered, and Remus felt he'd intruded on something very private. He hung back a moment awkwardly. "Sorry, Moony," James smiled, climbing off the bed. "We're ready, eh, Black?" "Yeah, of course." Sirius got up too. He had a dazed, distracted expression which made Remus ache on the inside. "Look what James gave me," Sirius said as he crossed the room. He held out something round and silver. Remus took it. It was warm from Sirius's hands. It was a compact mirror, beautifully etched with an ornate filigree-style design. Remus turned it over, snapping it open. "Very, pretty?" James laughed. "It's magic. Belonged to my granddad. Look." He opened his own identical compact and looked into it. Remus looked down at Sirius's mirror and was amazed to see James's bespectacled face grinning back at him. "So we can keep in touch over the summer." "Oh my God," Remus exclaimed. "That's amazing." "I know," James nodded, closing his compact and slipping it into his back pocket. "Wish I could have got them for all of us, but they're old family heirlooms and there's only 2. "Oh, of course." Remus handed the corresponding case back to Sirius. There was an awkward few seconds' silence before Remus cleared his throat. "Come on, McGonagall's going to hex us into next week if we miss the carriages." They did make the carriages and the train on time and piled into their usual compartment. Remus was most disconcerted to find that this year their little carriage space was packed full of people. Not only the 4 Marauders, but of course Desdemona was invited to join them. Remus had still not heard her say more than 2 words, possibly because her lips were so often occupied. Mary joined them too at Sirius's request. He'd been paying her a good deal of attention over the last few days, and it was obvious she was rather enjoying it, having recently taken a heavy knock to her confidence. With Mary, as always, was Marlene, and finally Lily, who would have been forced to sit alone otherwise. As such, it was an incredibly noisy ride back to London, between Sirius trying to impress Mary by singing every Beatles song he knew, James switching between trying to attract Lily's attention and talk Quidditch tactics with Marlene, and Peter and Desdemona's fevered fumblings. Remus simply sat back against the window and enjoyed being among friends for what might be the last time in a very long time. He tried not to think about the war or who might be missing over the summer, or who might go missing over the summer. He tried not to think about Sirius, alone and abused in a cold London mansion. He tried not to think about Ferox, off on dangerous missions for Dumbledore. He just watched his friends, their faces bright and animated, full of excitement and emotion. He rubbed the back of his head sleepily. His skinhead cut had grown out, and he had a pile of mousy brown curls now. He might not cut it again. He wouldn't let Matron do it, he decided. It was better longer. Softer. He didn't want to look hard and mean anymore. He didn't feel like he needed to. Smiling to himself, Remus drifted off to sleep.
Oh, Remus. How long did the audio break up? Was it like a long section? We could go back and read it. You guys missed like a big chunk.
Oh yeah, what happened? Oh no.
Because I don't know. It says the connection is excellent, so it didn't say there was any issue.
It was telling me that no one else was in the stream.
Oh.
Weird.
Yeah, it was it still says
that we're good. You can hear us now, right? My audio was... Wow, that's bizarre.
Fine. Okay. Just want to make sure it wasn't anything on our end that we could fix, so. Alright.
It was just oh, okay.
Okay.
4th year, Epilogue, some hours later. Remus dragged his trunk from the bus and down the long road to St. Edmund's all by himself. It was the first year Matron hadn't met him at King's Cross. She'd sent him his bus fare ahead of time and told him he was old enough now to make the journey alone. Perhaps she hoped he wouldn't come back at all. But where else would he go? He entered the cold grey building with a sense of resignation, signed himself in at the front desk and made his way to his dorm. It was a bright, warm day, and he could hear most of the other boys shouting outside. He was hot and sticky and hoping for a shower and a few quiet hours alone in which he could unpack and maybe get started on his summer reading. But as he entered the dorm room, he found he was not entirely alone. There was a boy sitting on the bed adjacent to his. He must be new. Remus didn't recognize him from last year. He looked about 15 or 16 and wore a light blue vest top with orange piping and long flared denim jeans. His socks didn't match. His hair was blonde and curly, his face sunny and snub-nosed. He had a casual, friendly air. "Oh, hello," Remus said quietly, dragging his trunk over to his bed. "All right," the other boy greeted him. He had a chipped front tooth and a lopsided grin that made Remus want to smile back at him. His hair was longish and fell into his eyes. "You're that kid what goes to fancy school all year, are you? Name's Grant." Remus nodded politely. "Remus, nice to meet you." "Blimey!" Grant cracked an even wider smile. "They said you was posh. Want me to bow to you, my lord?" Remus returned a soft smile, unable to help himself. The other boy wasn't being rude or nasty. He forgot how much his accent had changed after 4 years at Hogwarts. "Big reader, are you?" Grant nodded to the books Remus was unpacking. "I get a lot of homework," Remus said. Then he decided to relax for a bit. "And yeah, I like reading." "Cool," Grant replied. He lay back on the bed, arms behind his head, his long body stretched out, shirt rising up to expose the strip of skin just above his hips. Remus glanced at him sideways as he unpacked, trying not to look too much like he was looking. "So," Grant was saying, "what sort of music do you like?"
Ooh. Could this be Remus's first love?
Could it be Remus's first love?
Could this be when Remus figures it out?
Could be.
Lord Lupin.
Could be.
Yeah, that'll be the roleplay. Lord Remus.
Lord Remus of Wolfsbane Hall.
Wolfsbane Hall.
Also, love the mirror thing. That was great.
The mirror's finally here.
The mirror makes an introduction. Very cool. James gives it to Sirius, and then Sirius later gives it to Harry. Very cool. I liked that a lot.
But Lupin feeling a little left out. Good for him, though. He's finally, happy with himself. He's like, I don't have to be tough or anything.
I'm glad we got to this point. Finally.
I know. We got through the angst.
I know. He's finally starting to figure himself out and be okay with himself. Yeah.
Lupin's summer lovin'.
Summer lovin' happened so fast. Summer lovin' had me a blast.
That'd be great if that's the song that starts off the next.
Met a boy, cute as can be.
I mean, yeah. How some chapters start out. It'd be great if that song was there.
I got chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control. All the power, it's electrifying. Sorry.
Summer lovin'. Yeah, so this was cool.
This was good. This was fun. I liked
Desdemona and Pettigrew giving off some hardcore Brown and
Weasley vibes. Yeah, I know. It's very funny.
My God. Get a room.
What is she gonna call him? Pete?
Pee-pee?
Pee-pee?
Peter Pettigrew.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
I don't know. I don't know. One. Pot.
Pet.
Pet.
I don't know.
Sounds like a mouse or a rat.
It does.
So that works.
It does work, doesn't it?
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness.
So what's the next chapter? Are we going to just skip the summer? Or are we gonna?
No,
we're gonna
have summertime. Okay. He's her pet. Sorry.
That's right. Before he was Ron's pets, he was Desdemona's pet.
Chapter 72, Summer, 1975. Content warning for small mention of homophobic violence.
Oh,
okay. Selected letters between the Marauders. Dear Mooney, I'm pretty sure I can get away with writing letters, at least for now. I imagine they're being read, but I don't give a shit. Do you hear me, Regulus? Dreadful so far. Looks like Mum tried to take down my Gryffindor stuff while I was away, but I put it up with permanent sticking charms. I'm going to see if there's anything else I can put up to piss her off. There's a big family meeting next week. Posh dinner, dress robes, best behaviour, etc., etc. James thinks I should keep my head down and just make note of who attends and what gets said in case it's useful later. I don't know. Sort of want to set off some dung bombs instead. What would you do? Sirius. Sirius. Getting on with Reg, then. Go easy on him. You don't have anyone else on your side. Please be careful. I don't know what I'd do. I've never been to a posh dinner. Probably just make a twat of myself. Don't do anything stupid, okay? James is usually right. Remus. Dear Remus, can't believe I have to spend the whole summer without any of you. Sometimes I really hate being an only child. I bet you're never lonely at St. Edmund's. Sirius seems okay. He checks in pretty often. I think he's bored. If boredom is the worst of it, then that's a good thing, right? I keep trying to convince him not to make a fuss. We don't know what sort of thing the Blacks are involved in. Could be nothing at all. Hope your summer's off to a good start. Have you looked at the homework? The charms essay looks like a right ball ache. James. James. He'd be fine if he could control himself, but I doubt it. Keep talking to him. Remind him he's got to get back to Hogwarts in one piece. Summer's fine. You're right, I don't ever get lonely. I wouldn't mind a bit of privacy most of the time, but this summer's been good. Don't worry about me. That charms essay is a doddle and you know it. You just don't like hard work, Potter. Remus. Mooney. Greetings from San Francisco. I thought it would be hot here, but it's bloody freezing and rains most of the time. Merlin knows why Philomena would want to live here. It's no different than dear old Blighty. Pete.
You read in the wrong voice.
What do you mean?
Oh, I thought...
I'm not doing the voices with the letters.
I thought you did Sirius's voice, though.
I didn't, no.
Oh, okay.
Dear Mooney, caused an uproar this week. It was brilliant. Found a bunch of old Muggle posters and a skip down the road. Pictures of girls. You know the sort. They don't even move. It's hilarious. Anyway, stuck them up on the walls with my patented sticking charm, and Mum is furious. I think she's probably only annoyed now because they're Muggle girls. She couldn't care less that they've got their tits out. Anyway, now I can't go out unsupervised. Worth it, though. Sirius. Sirius, you're an idiot and you know it. Posters? Don't you feel weird with all them staring at you? Remus. Dear Remus, really worried about Sirius. I don't know if he told you about the stunt he pulled with the posters, but he's a bloody idiot for doing it. Don't believe him if he says he's fine. He'd definitely been crying when I spoke to him last with the mirror. Don't tell him I told you that, obviously. Stand by in case we need to trigger the rescue mission. James. James, ready when you are. Remus. Mooney, don't listen to Potter. He's an old woman. Everything's fine. Nothing I can't cope with. Hope you're having a good summer. Can't wait for September. Sirius.
San Francisco's a nice city. I haven't actually stayed. I drove through San Francisco when I was in California.
My coworker Sarah goes there all the time. Well, prior to COVID, she went there all the time because she has family there. I've never been. I'd like to go.
It's very beautiful. It's a beautiful city. A lot of hills, though.
Yeah, a lot of hills.
I would hate to drive in San Francisco.
I'd hate to live there. Housing costs.
Well,
housing is so expensive in San Francisco.
That's true.
All right. Enjoy watching Goblet of Fire. Thank you for coming to the stream.
Yes, thank you. Enjoy.
Friday, 22nd of August, 1975. Remus staggered weakly into the dorm room. It had been a bad one. Madame Pomfrey thought it must be because of the change of scenery. He had a long, thick scar across his chest now. It had been ages since he'd got a scar. Grant sat up abruptly, looking hurt. "Where you been?" he asked. "Thought you got arrested or something." "Sick," Remus replied. "Sick with what?" Remus sighed, flopping down on his bed. It had been a hard night and he just wanted to sleep. He closed his eyes. He didn't feel like excuses today. "Well, it was the full moon last night, you see," he said calmly. "When I was 5, I was bitten by a werewolf, and now I am one. I turn every month, and Matron locks me up so I don't hurt anyone else." "Oh, ha ha," Grant replied, climbing onto Remus's bed, straddling him. They were both so skinny they fit easily together on the narrow bunk. "Very funny, clever clogs. Fine, don't tell me." He leaned forward and kissed Remus. Remus opened his eyes, freezing for a moment. "It's fine," Grant assured him.
That's his idea of playing around?
Remus opened his eyes, freezing for a moment. "It's fine," Grant assured him, stroking his cheek. "They're all outside. I checked." Remus kissed him back.
Oh.
It had been a strange sort of summer, but one of the most pleasant Remus had ever had. He hadn't been lonely for one. He hadn't counted down the days until the 1st of September. In the beginning, he and Grant had bonded over David Bowie, T-Rex and Neil Young, even Deep Purple, who Grant was crazy about and Remus thought Sirius would probably like. They both hated football and the other boys, so they sloped off together around town or sat behind the big empty port-cabins, smoking stolen packs of fags. God, I can't read. They'd just been sitting there on the hot gravel one day in mid-July, flicking stones and debating the finer points of Electric Warrior, when suddenly Grant's hand was on Remus's knee, then at his waist, pulling him closer. "What are you—" "It's all right," Grant whispered, desperation edging his voice, pressing his forehead against Remus's hot cheek. "No one's going to find out." He tasted like cigarettes and sunburn. After that, whenever they were alone together, they were snogging.
Wait, what does sunburn taste like?
I don't know.
That's interesting that they would use that.
I don't know.
Oh, and thank you, Julk.
Oh, better than the official? Thank you so much. I know. Wow. Thank you very, very much. Wow. That's awesome. It was sort of a surprise, but mostly not. Remus quickly realized that he had always wanted it. This or something like it. Like a fog lifting. All things considered, he was grateful to Grant for having taken the initiative. It wasn't what you would call romantic or affectionate. More like a necessary thing. Something Remus knew that he had to push as far as it could go so that he could identify all of the hard edges and sharp limits of it. He was mapping out his own desires and using Grant as a compass. His full name was Grant Chapman. He'd just turned 16 and had been at St. Edmund's since May, though it was by no means his first home. Both of Grant's parents were living, and he even had some extended family, grandparents and aunts and uncles and grown-up cousins, but none of them seemed to want to keep him on for very long. "Too much of a handful," Grant would grin cheekily. "Everyone gets sick of me in the end." Like most of the boys at St. Edmund's, he did badly at school and had been in trouble with the police a few times on minor offences, though he'd never been officially arrested. He wasn't violent, but he had a mouth on him and a tendency to talk back, but there wasn't a threatening bone in his body. He was so clearly good all over. He had a spectacular smile. It creased his whole face and made you like him at once. One of his canine teeth was a bit wonky, and it was nothing short of endearing. Remus couldn't see why no one wanted him around. He was a bit silly sometimes, a bit immature, but that was okay. Remus knew he could be too serious a lot of the time. Something about Grant's chirpy, happy-go-lucky nature made Remus more confident and comfortable. And Grant just liked Remus so much. Really liked him. "You're the funniest bloke I ever met," Grant laughed when Remus hadn't said anything that amusing. "Mind you, never copped off with anyone from a private school before." "I'm no different than you," Remus replied. "A care home yob." "Piss off!" Grant shoved him playfully. "You're going places. Anyone can see that." Remus didn't have a response to that, but it made him smile. Grant always made him smile. Besides all of these things, Grant was a really, really good kisser. At least Remus assumed as much, considering that Grant was the only person he'd ever kissed. The first time he felt a wild thrill as he thought to himself, so this is what all the fuss is about.
He finally figured it out.
He just needed to kiss a boy. Duh.
That's all it took?
That's all it took?
Oh, and nothing is better. Nothing is a serious black smile.
No.
I don't care what Remus says.
Says, right? No. I agree. Nothing beats a serious black smile. Come on now. He could snog Grant all day long without coming up for air. Sometimes he found himself compulsively pursing his lips in the night, hot with withdrawal pangs. Remus had expected kissing to be scary and awkward, but, as with so many things, Grant just put him at ease. He made it fun, right from the beginning. No fuss, no questions. If you're only here for the summer, then we might as well enjoy it, eh? He would say cheerfully. Don't worry, I ain't exactly about to propose, sweet as you are. Sweet? Remus scoffed. Sweet, Grant winked, and bloody too good for me by half. Remus hated that kind of talk and shut him up with another kiss. They had to hide most of the time, of course, from the other boys and from the staff. Remus couldn't imagine what would happen if they were ever found out. They'd be separated definitely, even if they weren't beaten to a pulp. Would Matron tell Dumbledore? Could they expel you for being for kissing other boys? Fortunately, Grant had some experience in covert operations, and they never even came close to being disturbed. How many times have you done this sort of thing? Remus got up the courage to ask one day. They were behind some disused bike sheds at the local secondary school. Few times, Grant shrugged. Not enough. You? Never, Remus replied, shocked. I didn't even... Oh, bless ya, Grant laughed lightly, tugging one of Remus's curls. You didn't know. Remus shook his head, his ears growing hot. Grant tutted. Never look at another bloke for too long? Never get that feeling about a film star or a teacher? Oh my God! Remus gasped, images of Ferox crashing down on him. Grant laughed again. And I thought you were all at it, with your boarding school lads. Remus just shook his head again in disbelief, wondering if there was something else he didn't know about himself. As summer approached, Remus found himself trying to ignore it. He felt guilty for not having spent the summer worrying about the war, for being distracted by his own selfish urges, especially at a time like this. But at the same time, he felt like he might never have this opportunity again. The other Marauders sent letters, as they did every summer. Remus diligently wrote back, not wanting them to worry. He said nothing at all about Grant. He didn't know what to say, sure that if he put pen to paper it would all come spilling out and the other boys would never speak to him again. Or worse, they'd try to understand it without looking at him in the eye. That was part of it. On the other hand, Remus just liked the idea of keeping it to himself. The Marauders didn't have to know everything about him, and he was allowed to have other friends, wasn't he?
Remus just keeping secrets from everyone.
Boom.
Good for him, though, for finally figuring it out.
I know! Wow. It feels good to just finally have it out there, doesn't it? Oh my God, what a struggle.
Ferox thing, just... Oh my God.
I know, that was funny, right?
He wasn't that great of a teacher.
I was just hormonal. I just love that Remus just... Oh, that's what it's been this whole time. Oh my God.
So many questions now. He should have been the secret keeper.
Right?
Messed up. I mean, honestly, anyone but Pettigrew. Sirius, Remus, anyone.
Anyone else.
Dumbledore.
For real, if anyone's good at keeping secrets, it's Dumbledore.
It's Dumbledore.
Right? He should have been the secret keeper.
Should just be everyone's secret keeper.
Right? Ah, yes, I should have told you that, said Dumbledore. Summation of the entire series.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh my God. I mean, this was fun.
That was.
Grant seems like a nice young man.
Yeah. I don't know. This past year seems like things really just kind of dragged in the story.
Yeah, it
So
did.
now that Remus is a little bit happier, he's out there, he's starting to understand. Seems like the story's it's a little bit more interesting now.
Yeah. We're picking up for sure.
Yeah.
Finally.
So will this be the year where he now that he knows what those emotions are, when he's just gonna run into Sirius is gonna flash that serious black smile. He's just gonna be like, "Oh my god, I'm in love with you."
Yep. Yeah, the middle of the series lull kind of, yeah.
Every story has them. And oh yeah, I think I missed that one. Dan says that was quick for Remus to come around. And it was. Like how did that happen? Did maybe he just caught Remus looking at him one day and was just like, "Oh,
You like me."
yeah." Or was it that he liked Remus?
I think they bonded, and Grant obviously has been out for, well, maybe not out, but
He at least knows.
he knows he's gay.
Yeah.
And he probably picked up on signals that Remus was subconsciously giving him.
Yeah.
And then kind of just went for it, and it worked. I just think it's so funny. Remus is like, "Oh my god, now I know what it's all about. I know why everyone wants to kiss now. I get it."
Maybe he just leaned in and gave Remus a kiss, and Remus was just like, "What? No, wait, what are you doing?" That was actually pretty good. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I understand now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody just had to go for it.
Yeah.
Grant is an interesting character, and I feel like he's gonna be kind of recurring now.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll be gone when Remus comes back next year, and Remus will be like devastated or something.
Maybe. Or maybe Remus is gonna come back and it's just not gonna be the same. He's not serious. Now that Remus understands his feelings towards
Sirius. I know. It's interesting how dynamic is going to play out with Sirius now.
Or maybe this is the year where Sirius is going to catch some of those subtle hints from Sirius, and he's going to be like, "Oh, Sirius.
I think you might be like me, and we should kiss to see how it works out." Well, let's see what happens.
All right.
Chapter 73. 5th year. Silver. Monday, 1st of September, 1975. Hey, mama said the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you groove. Child, way shake that thing, gonna make you burn, gonna make you sting. Hey, baby, when you walk that way, watch your honey drip, I can't keep away.
You can do better than that.
I just don't wanna.
Fair enough.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's gonna get interesting now.
Feeling.
Remus shifted uncomfortably as he waited for a quiet moment to run at the ticket barrier. He was glad Matron hadn't come with him this year, glad to have had the time alone to prepare himself. Grant had wanted to come, but Matron said no and wouldn't give him the fare anyway. They managed a quick goodbye locked inside a bathroom at St. Edmund's, one of their many hiding places. Neither of them had said any of the things they'd wanted to say. Actually, they'd hardly spoken at all, but with minutes left, Remus promised he'd try to write. "I'm crap at writing," Grant complained. "Can't you give me your phone number?" It's a really old-fashioned school. We don't get to use the phone much," Remus blagged. He thought there might be a phone box in Hogsmeade, or maybe the next village over, which was non-magical. He could try. Now, as he took aim at the grey ticket barrier and started forward, he had that usual sensation of leaving the Muggle world, and everyone in it, behind for another year. Grant did not exist on this side of the platform. Grant had never happened, and Remus was the same old Remus. Nothing has changed, he told himself. Nothing is different. Matron hadn't insisted he cut his hair this time, so he wasn't beginning the term looking like an oik. He was taller again. He wondered if he'd ever stop growing sometimes, but other than these silly superficial things, everything was as it had been, as it should be. No one would notice because there was nothing to notice, Remus told himself firmly. Nothing at all. He rubbed the back of his head absent-mindedly then, remembering Grant's fingers having been there only hours before, wiped his lips self-consciously. Shit. All right, you tosser! James slapped him on the back out of nowhere. James, really? Mrs. Potter chastised her son, standing beside him. She beamed up at Remus. Just look at you! You've grown inches! She pulled him into a hug. Still far too skinny for my liking. She began to straighten his clothes, peppering him with questions. Did he have something to eat for the journey? Had he come alone? Did he want any help getting his things aboard? By the end of this motherly assault, Remus was grinning from ear to ear, relaxed in the knowledge that everything was, indeed, fine. Nothing was different at all. He cheerfully boarded the train with James and Peter, chattering about their summers and their excitement for the year ahead. James had a silver pin on his chest emblazoned with a large C. Remus could smell it the second James came close, an irritating sting in his nostrils. He'd got his dearest wish, and was now Quidditch captain.
He has to be. He's the James Wood of this era.
Oliver.
Or Oliver Wood.
Yeah.
James Wood. I mean, basically, there you go.
Yeah.
They're the same person.
They sat in their usual compartment, and Remus pulled his book from his bag, sitting in with a satisfied sigh. Then Sirius walked in, and Remus's stomach dropped through the floor. Knew it.
Yep.
He spends his whole time. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. He was almost the same as ever. Height-wise, he'd nearly caught up with James now, and he was broader about the chest. His jaw had squared, and perhaps his nose had lengthened, but he had the same glossy black hair, the same arresting eyes and high cheekbones. He was still Sirius, but he was somehow other, as if Remus was seeing him through new eyes. The heat of desire flared up in his chest out of nowhere, settling in his cheeks as a heavy blush. He looked away quickly before anyone noticed.
Yep. Called it. He just sees Sirius and is just like, oh my god. I'm in love with him.
Oh, this is so funny. This is so great. I am loving this right now. This is so great. Gentlemen, Sirius nodded graciously, entering the carriage like a prince. All right, the other two grinned and Remus mumbled. Sirius sat directly opposite Remus, his hair in uniform, purposefully untidy, no doubt for the benefit of Walpurga Black, and flung out his legs as if he didn't expect them to be as long as they were. His ankle bumped against Remus's, and Remus shot up suddenly, sitting bolt upright and tucking his own gangly legs neatly under his seat. Sirius gave him a funny look, then a smirking grin which caused a sharp tug behind Remus's navel. Oh, God, he thought. No, no, no! Half expected you not to be here, James said, relieved. Couldn't have the black heir not turning up for his first day of school. Sirius rolled his dark blue eyes, raising an artful eyebrow. Couldn't have the whole wizarding world knowing that there's strife in my noble family. How are you? James asked earnestly. How are you? Fine, Sirius nodded a bit stiffly. Don't want to talk about it now. Can we just pretend it's a normal first day? Yeah, all right, mate, James nodded unconvincingly. Pete was just telling us about California. We didn't manage to find Phil, Peter said. Her housemate said she'd moved on, everywhere we looked. Mum was... well, she was really upset. It was crap. Remus felt a stab of guilt. It was so long ago now, but he'd once told Philomena she could just run away if she wanted. No one says you have to use magic. After his own blissfully simple magic-free summer, Remus was starting to envy Peter's sister. The train had pulled out of the station, and the grey London buildings were whooshing by, soon to give way to the lush green fields of the home counties. How was your summer, Moony? James asked suddenly, and Remus realised Peter had stopped talking some time ago. Yeah, fine. Remus had practised this in his head on his way to King's Cross, but he hadn't but he hadn't counted on Sirius looking so... It was difficult to stay focused. Usual, nothing exciting. Football, homework. Yeah, fine. Not great, but well, fine. Yeah, not bad. Fine. Oh my god, this is so great. Thankfully, the door to their carriage slid open, putting a stop to his blabbering. Lily Evans stood in the doorway, beaming with delight, her hair a fiery halo. Evans! James boomed eagerly. You found me! As if it's hard, Potter. Lily rolled her eyes. You lot are always in the same car. Anyway, I'm not here for you. I'm here for you. She pointed at Remus, still grinning. Me? Remus frowned, confused for a moment, then it dawned on him. He sighed heavily, wanting to sink into his chair and disappear. The other 3 Marauders and Lily were all staring at him with varying expressions, all expectant. You got it, didn't you? She said impatiently. Come on, we have to go for a meeting in the... Merlin! Sirius suddenly exclaimed, slapping his forehead comically. How did we forget? Moony, are you a prefect? James yelled. Remus hung his head. Yeah. And you didn't tell us immediately so we could rip the piss out of you? Sirius's face had lit up, some of the old 11-year-old mischief maker showing through. You're just jealous, Lily said haughtily. Come on, Remus, where's your badge? The badge? Sirius burst out laughing. I forgot about the badge. Oh, please, Moony, show us the badge. Peter and James's shoulders were shaking too, and Remus shook his head, trying to look disapproving. It's in my trunk. Well, put it on, Lily said. Come on, we have our own carriage and everything. Hey, Evans, I'm Quidditch captain, you know. Yes, Marlene said, Lily said, without so much as glancing at James's direction. Come on, Remus. Okay, but the badge is in the bottom of the trunk. I'll wear it tomorrow, Remus said, getting up. Oh, no, we can look for it if you want. No, I can't be bothered, Remus shrugged, not looking at her. Oh, go on, Sirius wheedled, getting up and reaching for Remus's trunk. We want to see you in your nice, shiny badge. No, Remus snapped, glaring at Sirius. Thank goodness it was still easy to get annoyed with him. He raised his eyebrows so Lily couldn't see and said very pointedly, Silver isn't my colour. Sirius's eyes widened immediately in realization. Remus raised his eyebrows and followed Lily out. He glanced back through the glass door just in time to see James quickly removing his own pin. Being a prefect was as bad as Remus had expected. The letter had come as much as a surprise to him as to everyone else. The pin fell out of his usual Hogwarts reading list and onto his lap one summer morning. He'd hissed with pain as the silver burned his fingers and dropped it on the floor. Grant picked it up. What the bloody hell is this? I'm a prefect, Remus said, not believing it himself. A what? Jesus, sometimes I think I've made you up. You don't know the half of it, Remus had groaned. My friends are never going to let me live this down. Ah, good! Grant stuck out his pink tongue. Remus just shook his head again and resolved to write a letter to Dumbledore about this, demanding that someone else be given the job. James would be good. Even Peter would be better than Remus. Dumbledore had not responded. He tried McGonagall, who did respond, simply saying that the decision was final. Remus decided to try once again when the term started. On the train, Lily and James had to attend an extremely tiresome meeting with all of the other prefects, led by the interminably boring head boy and girl. After that, they were expected to patrol the corridors, stopping anyone from having any fun. Unfortunately, Lily took this duty very seriously, and Remus got the feeling it was going to be a very long year. Still, it was much preferable to sitting in a confined space with Sirius. He would have to do his best to steer clear for a while, until he worked out this latest revelation. The feast was okay. It felt less merry than previous years. Remus didn't know if that was his own turmoil or the pallor of the war. There were less students than usual, only a handful of first years. No one was mentioning it. After dinner, Lily made Remus patrol again, and he actually didn't mind. He hoped that it would stay that way. He could stay away long enough Stay away long enough Oh, Jesus. He hoped that if he could stay away long enough, the others would be in bed. Then he wouldn't have to see them until lessons the next morning, if James and Sirius left early for Quidditch practice. You're still not wearing your pin, Lily said as they walked the length of the 4th floor hall. Yeah, sorry, Remus yawned. I'll find it tomorrow, promise. So, how was summer? Yeah, great. Remus grinned wider than he meant to. Lily smiled back at him, looking genuinely pleased. Oh, that's lovely. What did you do? Nothing. Loads of homework. Weirdo, Lily elbowed him, laughing. Even I don't like homework that much.
But if only she knew.
If only she knew.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Dan makes a good point. How did Dumbledore do that? Send him a real silver pin. Dumbledore knows? He's gotta know.
Yeah, Dumbledore knows.
Yeah, so make an exception. Send him a tin pin or something.
That is kind of a dick move on Dumbledore's part.
100%.
Like, he should have thought about that a little bit.
And,
what the heck, Dumbledore?
Oh.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing for Dumbledore on that one. There's nothing.
Dumbledore 100% just messed up.
He just messed up, for sure.
I mean, he is busy with Voldemort.
But still.
All that. But...
There's one werewolf student at the school. One! There's one!
Who at least has gotten your attention enough that he became a prefect. What'd you think?
And he wrote a letter to Dumbledore about it! Like...
Oh, oops.
Dumbledore can't have made the connection.
No, definitely not.
I think Lucas is right, though. I think Lily's gonna figure it out, too.
Oh, yeah.
I think she's gonna figure it out.
And I think I like Braxton's comment that Lily sounds so much like Hermione, because really is, and it all works out because James's family is very much like the Weasleys and how they take care of Lupin.
Yeah.
They get together, and then you have Hermione,
who gets together with Ron. Yeah, and Ron.
Yeah.
Yep, it is.
She is very much like
She's very Hermione, yeah.
So it's actually perfect how
this is playing out.
Written these characters with her sounding like Hermione.
Yeah, she does have some very Hermione tendencies. Not as extreme, but for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dumbledore effed up.
Because, see, Hermione, she would have liked doing homework that much.
Because Hermione would have been like, oh yes, I wrote 3 extra rolls of parchment than I was supposed to for this essay. Do you think that's all right? And then she just would have...
I'll do extra.
It's okay. Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hope chapter 21 was good. Meanwhile, let's finish this chapter. It's still not. We're still.
Forgot.
Yeah, it's good. These are just longer. These are some of these are pretty long. He was right. By the time he got back to the common room, everyone had gone to bed, and the Marauder's bedroom was dark and quiet. He padded quietly into the bathroom, brushed his teeth, and pulled out his pajamas, then crept over to his bed, drawing the curtains tight. It felt as though he'd only just relaxed properly when he heard Sirius get out of bed. He knew each of his roommates by their footsteps now. He used to like knowing it. Now it felt like a peculiar kind of torture, as Sirius drew closer and hissed, "Moony! Psst! Oi, even you don't fall asleep that easily!" Remus groaned, crawled to the edge of the bed, and opened the curtains. "What? Come on, why are you avoiding us? Is it the prefect thing? You know we're just teasing. Lighten up. Here, I've got something for you." He opened his hand. In the dark, Remus leaned over and saw his red and silver prefect pin. He frowned. "Is this a joke?" "No, take it. Trust me, Remus." Sirius caught his eye, and Remus's mind went completely blank. He accepted the pin, waited, and felt nothing. He blinked and looked down. "What?" "Transfigured it." Sirius smiled, looking thrilled. His teeth gleamed in the dark. "It's tin now. Did the same to James's. I reckon I can get Mary to pinch Evans's too, and I'll do that. You'll be spending loads of time with her, so might as well." "Thank you." "Don't be silly." Sirius shook his head, still smiling, eyes soft. "Anything for you, Moony. Good night." He turned and crept back to his own bed. Remus fell back onto his pillows, exhaling heavily, still clutching the pin so tight it bit into his palm. He flung the covers over his head and willed his heart to stop pounding. Oh, God, he thought grimly. I fancy Sirius Black.
Oh man, that's so great. It was just last night I watched the episode of Seinfeld where George finds out that he has feelings for Elaine.
Oh.
If anyone else has watched Seinfeld, I love that show. But that's the whole time I'm thinking, like, that's this.
Oh, God.
Acting. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. I like him. Oh, no.
And Sirius doesn't help when he says things like, anything for you, Mooney.
Yeah. Or doing nice things like changing his pin to tin.
Mm-hmm. And there it is.
Yes, there it is. Now we know.
Nope. Now we know.
Just wait. How excited do you think Lupin's gonna be when he starts noticing little signals from Sirius?
I'm sorry, my back is like, I don't know. It's doing something, and I don't like it, and it hurts me.
Stiff.
Yeah. Sitting in the same position. I don't know. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Ecstatic.
Then he's going to be like, does Sirius Black fancy me? Maybe he'll take a hint from Grant and...
Just go in for the kiss?
Yeah. Go for it. Why not?
I mean, maybe.
He might. He might. I don't know. I think Lily's going to figure it out.
Yeah, I think she is.
Just like Hermione figured it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, before Lupin and Sirius figure it out. Lily's going to know. And then she's going to be like Lupin's wingman. Wing lady.
It's 1:30 a.m. today in India, so good night. Good night!
Oh, fair enough. Good night.
Yes, get some sleep. You can catch the rest of the stream another time, for sure. Well, we still have a good hour. Should we keep going?
Yeah, definitely. I need to know. Hopefully we can maybe see if Lupin at least catches some signals from Sirius.
Right? Oh, God. Oh, God.
You just lost it, didn't you?
It did. Nope, there we go.
We're
okay, we're good.
Right?
74.
4. Just read 73.
Chapter 74. 5th year. Pain.
Pain. Just pain.
Content warning. Dark themes and domestic abuse. We gotta go back down because we were on such a high. Go figure.
Oh, man.
I think Lily figured it out at their date. That part, yeah. No, I think she kind of gets that he's gay. I think she's going to figure out he's a werewolf. That's what I think she's going to figure out.
Oh, I was going to say, I was saying she was going to figure out that he likes Sirius.
Oh, yeah. I think, no, I think she's going to figure that out too, for sure. Dan makes an excellent point. Lupin spends a lot of time alone in Grimmauld Place with Sirius. And this story goes through the entire Harry Potter series as well.
See, someone needs to refer Rowling to this so we can find out if Rowling is like, you know what? I like it. Let's make it canon. Let's do it. Because it so much fits.
It does fit really well, doesn't it?
I mean, there's definitely some issues that,
Yeah. Well, yeah, but yeah.
It fits.
That's, Katie and I were like, I was thinking she's going to figure out he's a werewolf. I think she's going to figure that out.
that was coming, but keeping with the theme of the last couple chapters, I was leaning more towards figuring out his feelings towards Sirius and then kind of, being the wing lady.
Remus overslept the next morning and would have missed breakfast if Peter hadn't shouted his name about 100 times before leaving himself. As the door slammed, Remus rolled onto his back and stared at a chink of light coming through his curtains. He'd slept badly and resigned himself to sleeping badly every night until he got this ridiculous Sirius thing out of his system. The first thing to do was to stop thinking about it, he told himself sternly, jumping out of bed and heading straight for the shower. Cold as he could stand it. James and Sirius must have left early for Quidditch. A memory of Sirius in his scarlet robes surfaced, his hair pulled back, face glistening, that energetic, competitive glint in his eyes. Remus groaned and turned the shower knob all the way from lukewarm to icy. He forced himself to think about something else. Charms or arithmancy or history. Yes, he found that listing off the names of the generals involved in each side of the Great Goblin Revolt of 1642 seemed to calm him down a bit. Gave him something to focus on, anyway. You couldn't have lustful thoughts with names like Krebshunk and Fripp the Disemboweler running through your head. What a struggle. I feel like... Oh, man.
That's so great.
He dressed and headed down for breakfast. Their first lesson was Transfiguration, and you could never get away with being late for McGonagall. In the Great Hall, Peter was sitting at the Ravenclaw table with Desdemona, and they were clearly getting reacquainted after a long summer apart. Remus sighed a little inwardly, remembering how that felt. It was even worse to watch other couples snogging when you knew what you were missing. Sirius and James were at the Gryffindor table, both dressed in their school uniforms, but decidedly rumpled from practice. Their body language was very out of character. Sirius was turned away from James, nose in the air, James looking furtive and wound up. If Remus didn't know better, he'd have thought they were in the middle of a row. As he sat down opposite his friends, he found that this first impression had been correct. They were sitting in stony silence, and it was clear that Sirius was being very stubborn about something. "Morning," Remus said, tentatively reaching for some toast and jam. "Morning, your prefectness," Sirius replied with half a smile. He was pouring spoonful after spoonful of brown sugar into his porridge. "Hiya, Moony," James said, glancing over at him briefly before turning back to Sirius. He looked worn out, stressed. It didn't suit him. "Sirius," he said, very seriously. Sirius ignored him. "Sirius!" James repeated louder. "Not now, Potter. I'm busy." "You're playing with your breakfast." James wrinkled his nose. "And please don't eat that. My teeth hurt just looking at it." Remus thought it looked good, actually. He liked very sweet things, especially when he was in a bad mood. He kept this opinion to himself. Best not to get involved when James and Sirius were concerned. Sirius finished pouring his last teaspoon of sugar, stirred it vigorously until the mixture had turned the texture and color of sand. He scooped up a heaped spoonful, then, making eye contact with James the whole time, shoved it in his mouth and chewed. Remus could hear the grains of sugar crunching between his teeth. James shook his head. "You don't have to be like that. I'm not Regulus," he said grumpily. Sirius scowled at him, then stood up. "Gotta go to the library," he said, his mouth still full of oversweet porridge. "See you in Transfiguration." James sighed heavily, watching Sirius leave. Remus breathed a small sigh of relief, but felt immediately guilty about it. There was obviously something wrong with his friend, and he ought to be just as concerned as James. "What's up?" he asked, hoping he could sound calm and caring. "You see him limping?" James said, still watching Sirius walk out of the hall. Remus looked. He had the same arrogant swagger as usual, his hair swishing and his shoulders back, but... Yes, Remus thought James was right. He looked a bit unsteady at his feet. "Something happen at practice?" James frowned. "No," James said. Remus frowned. "No," James shook his head. "Been like that since yesterday." Remus thought back, scanning his memories. Sirius had been sitting down most of the time Remus had seen him, and even then, Remus hadn't exactly been looking in great detail. In fact, he'd been trying to do the opposite. His guilt took on a new dimension. "You think his mum did something?" he asked, his stomach churning. "I know she did," James replied fiercely. He was looking at the Slytherin table now. "He tried to hide it in the changing rooms, but I caught him in the showers, and... Merlin, Moony, if you saw..." "What?" James shook his head as if he wished he could shake out the image. "She's butchered him." A chill ran through Remus that was 10 times more effective than a cold shower. All of a sudden he was 11 again, and back in the Quidditch changing room after he and Sirius had crashed their brooms. 11-year-old Sirius whispered, I've got scars, and lifted his trouser leg to show the long, straight silver marks. At the time, Remus had only thought how different they were than his own scars, how neat and uniform, as if they'd been done with a razor blade. Later, Sirius had described the scars as a discipline technique, but they'd never discussed it again. Is he okay? Remus asked shakily, no longer wanting his toast. He says he is, James replied, but he won't talk about it or say anything. I shouldn't have brought up Regulus like that. He's just so bloody stubborn. What can we do? Remus worried. He can't go back there. It's not right. Can your family do something? They tried last summer, James said sadly. But no joy. If I can get him to go to someone, Dumbledore or even Madame Pomfrey, if they could see what that old bitch does, maybe we could get him out. He won't, though, Remus sighed. Sirius would never show weakness like that. Can you try, Moony? James asked desperately. He won't talk to me, but sometimes you can sort of shock him into it. Me? Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know, I think he listens to you sometimes. He always wants to impress you. Oh, why did James have to say a thing like that? They went to Transfiguration and found Sirius already there, studiously ignoring them. It was the same story for the rest of the day. Even at lunchtime, Sirius engaged Mary and Marlene in conversation before James or Remus could get a word in. He kept them entertained with silly impressions of Peter and Desdemona so that they were hysterical with laughter. James sat by, grim-faced, his expression not flickering once. They weren't able to trap Sirius alone until well after dinner. Peter was once again conspicuously absent, and Remus found that he and Lily were off the rota for patrol that evening. They caught Sirius exiting the bathroom, and James stood in front of the door so he couldn't escape to the common room. Remus decided to go for the direct approach. Heard you had a shit summer, he said, looking at Sirius in the eye. It was easier if you're ready for it. Sirius snorted. What's James been saying? That you're hurt, but you're too much of a stuck-up git to admit it. I'm not hurt, Sirius growled, disgusted. It's healing. This morning you were bleeding, James said angrily, clearly at his wit's end. What? Remus said, alarmed. God, Sirius, you've got to go to Madame Pomfrey. And have the whole school know how my mother likes to amuse herself? No, thanks. Yes, because Madame Pomfrey tells the whole school everything, Remus said, raising a sarcastic eyebrow. Let me see. No, Godric, you're worse than Potter. Come on, I've shown you mine. Remus caught his eye again and held it. He saw Sirius calculating, weighing up the benefits, then slowly relenting. I don't want James to see, he said, looking down, embarrassed. Remus turned and looked at James, whose shoulders slumped a bit with disappointment. Still, stoic as ever, he nodded and promptly left the room. Remus felt very vulnerable now, being alone with Sirius. He pushed all selfish thoughts aside and tried to concentrate on helping his best friend. Come on, then, he nodded at Sirius. Let's see, one victim to another. He'd meant that as a bit of a dark joke, but realized at once it had been the wrong thing to say. He cursed himself and resolved to shut up unless he had something helpful to say. Sirius sat on the nearest bed, which happened to be Remus's, and pulled up his trouser leg. Remus had to hold back a gasp of horror. James had used exactly the right word. Butchered. The marks were not neat and crossed and ordered as the earlier scars had been. These were vicious, crisscrossed, varying in depth as severity. The entire backs of his calves looked as though someone had sliced at them with a surgeon's scalpel. Lacero, Remus asked, trying to keep his face blank. Sirius flinched slightly at the word, but nodded. Bitch, Remus said. Sirius laughed. Goes all the way up, he said. Shit, Remus breathed. He backed away, then went to his bedside table to rummage round. I've got something that'll stop it hurting. It doesn't. Don't lie, Remus commanded, pulling out his jar of Murtlap essence. I know pain. Sirius accepted this. Remus returned and handed him the jar. Sirius looked at it, then at Remus expectantly. You rub it on, Remus said. He shook the jar impatiently. Come on, I'm not doing it for you. I'm not your house elf. He thought he'd been doing pretty well, but it would all come crumbling down if he had to touch Sirius, even somewhere as innocent as his calves. Sirius grinned and took the Murtlap essence. He scooped out a liberal dollop with his long fingers and smeared some onto his leg. Remus saw from the look on his face that it had worked at once. His features relaxed. Some of the sharpness left his eyes. He must have really been in pain. Bloody hell, you're amazing, Moony, Sirius said, cheering up as he continued to apply the essence. Remus blushed and shrugged. It's just magic. Not like I discovered the stuff. Yeah, but still. Sirius stood up now and began to unbutton his trousers so that he could do the rest of the cuts. Remus practically leapt back and scrambled toward the door, babbling. I'll give you some privacy. Got to go anyway. Homework. His voice was much higher than he wanted it to be. He practically ran down the stairs and bumped straight into James. Is he okay? Yeah, I gave him something for it. Just give him a minute. I think he'll come down. Brilliant, thanks, Remus. I didn't talk to him about going to a teacher or anyone. Yeah, but he's talking to us now, James beamed. Seriously, thanks, Moony. You're a legend. We're going to pay you back. I'm not supposed to say anything about it yet, but, well, I promise we're going to. With that, James clapped him on the shoulder, then ran up the stairs to see Sirius. Remus sank into a nearby armchair and decided to reassess a few things. He had to get away, in case they came back down. He left the common room and went to the library, where he spent the rest of the evening painstakingly studying the Goblin rebellions. It was OWLs this year, after all, and he couldn't allow his libido to wreck everything he'd been working for. It was almost curfew by the time he felt ready to leave. His eyes twitched and his back ached, and he was in a bad mood, but at least he wasn't thinking about Sirius anymore. Well, not really. He left the library and walked quickly up the dark corridors to Gryffindor Tower. He was at least halfway there when he heard an odd sort of noise, like a whimper, at the end of the charms hallway. Sighing to himself, he went to investigate. Lily would have had his guts for garters if he didn't. It was as he suspected. 2 Slytherins had cornered a Ravenclaw first year and were tormenting him. They held him in a binding curse. Remus had been in that position multiple times. Expelliarmus! He called out, and the 2 Slytherins' wands flew into his hands. They turned, one dark-haired and one fair, Barty Crouch and Regulus Black. Oh, you two, Remus yawned, leaning casually against the wall. The Ravenclaw scurried off, squeaking a quick "Thank you" to Remus as he did so. Loony Lupin! Barty smirked. He had a horrible smile, as if he'd never really known joy or happiness. Watch your tongue, Crouch, Remus hissed, then shot a curse at him. At once, Barty's tongue began to swell up, turning purple as it did so. He clutched at it desperately, but it was one of James's engorgement charms, and could not be stopped. Better get to the hospital wing, Remus smiled pleasantly. I'll send your wands up to your head of house. Let him know you are out of bounds. How dare you! Regulus seethed, marching over to Remus. He was much shorter, almost the same height as Sirius, but it didn't stop him squaring up to the 5th year. The summer had clearly treated Regulus poorly too. He was paler than ever, his eyes dark and hollow. Filthy half-blood scum! You might be a prefect, but you're still just a cowardly, dirty... Cowardly, am I? Remus saw red and dropped both wands, instead using his hands to ram Regulus up against the wall by his neck. The younger boy's head hit the brick wall, and he blinked, genuine terror showing on his face. Remus didn't care. In fact, it was perfect. I may be a half-blood, Remus hissed menacingly, but at least I don't stand by and watch my family get cut to shreds. Regulus's eyes widened and a terrible, haunted look came over him. I told him to stop pushing her, but he wouldn't listen, he whispered. I couldn't stop her. Disgusted, Remus let go. Barty was still choking further down the hall. You're a coward, Regulus Black, Remus said. very quietly, "Don't ever forget it." He spat at Regulus's feet and walked away.
Wow. Okay. Ending on a very serious note there. Yes, Expelliarmus, the most powerful spell of all.
Harry's best friend.
So,
Wow.
I could see it backfiring, but I think that whole coward thing is actually going to push Regulus. I think that's going to be the reason why he does what he does with the locket.
Or if it eventually when he gets there, yeah.
Yeah. I think this is going to push Regulus on the right path.
Well, he's going to become a Death Eater first. He's going to go down that rabbit hole pretty far first.
Well, yeah, but I think
those words are going to haunt him.
It seems like he's very conflicted. I think he has that part that he wants to be the black that his family wants him to be, but he's not. I think
Regulus is doing that thing that you find in abusive households where he's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And doesn't know how far to try and protect Sirius, because the harder he tries to protect Sirius, the more hurt he'll get as well.
Yeah.
And I think he's got survival instinct going on.
Kind of like, to bring it back to Game of Thrones, it's like Renly telling Eddard,
"Oh, do not do this."
Yeah.
Do not do
he does. Because he told him, don't do it.
Well, let's see. James and Lily were 21 when they were murdered, right? So
Regulus is 1 year or 2 years younger.
I think he's 1 year younger than them. At least in this story he is. So
he would have been the same age, because Sirius is a year older than Lupin and James.
Right, because his birthday's in November.
Yeah.
So Regulus is probably, I would say, well, I don't know when Regulus's birthday is either, but 19, 20?
So 19 or 20.
I would think. 19 or 20.
So, I think, I don't know if he, planned on turning on Voldemort.
I don't think so.
When he became a Death Eater, but I don't think his heart was never in it.
I think
he was doing what he felt like he was supposed to do, but
and maybe he did for a while buy into it, but it's finding out about the Horcruxes that triggers him to do it.
Maybe, but I don't think his heart was in it, and I think that's apparent even in the main story. And I think it's really the fact, the way Voldemort treated Creature that snapped him out of it, and that's the catalyst that makes him turn on Voldemort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how he uses Creature really messes him up.
Yeah.
And if we're taking this as canon, maybe those words haunt him for Thank you, Marcelo.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he had no choice.
Yeah.
And Sirius clearly rebelled, and he saw what happens to you when you rebel.
Yeah,
so he's not gonna do that.
To be in one piece.
Yeah, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to get butchered.
Yeah. Basically.
Regulus is an interesting character for sure.
Right? I'm sure there's a fanfic out there, but I wonder if there's any really well-written fanfics about him, because he would be a very interesting, spin-off character to read about.
Absolutely. Regulus Black is a character who never makes an appearance, really, except for Creature's story. And then when Sirius talks about him, and he's just a very interesting individual. I think Sirius and Regulus are exhibiting two prime examples of, like, what happens when children live in a dysfunctional, abusive household. You have, like, the rebel.
Yep.
You have the, like, the joking clown child. You have the hero who tries to do everything right.
Regulus.
And that's what Regulus is doing. And then you have Sirius, who is just not doing it at all.
The defiant.
Yeah. So it's very interesting.
Right, Regulus does need his own novel. I would totally just read a novel just about Regulus.
I would, yeah, definitely. JK, what are you doing? JK's just trying not to get canceled completely. I think that's what she's doing. I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more.
Let's read one more.
Through it pretty quick.
Let's read one more.
Oh, going back a little ways. Lucas, did you just quote Swing Life Away? I love that song.
Where?
I'm gonna rewrite these pages and replace them with the wrong words.
Oh.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours first. Let's compare scars. I'll tell you whose is worse. Rise Against, Swing Life Away. Okay. It's a great song.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, Marcel. I think that's the big thing. Like, he was kind of going along with it, but then... Oh, nice. You have a great choice in music, Lucas. And yeah, I think it's just that, like, once he messed with Creature, it, like, snapped him out of this whole idea that he had to be what his parents wanted him to be, and he was just like, no, I'm not about it.
Yeah. I think what happened to Creature definitely was... Yeah.
He tried to redeem himself in that way.
All right. Are we ready? One more chapter before we sign off.
All right.
Chapter 75. 5th year. The surprise.
Surprise kiss?
Warnings. Smoking and casual mention of drug use.
Oh, okay.
Sexuality. Remus is working through a lot of stuff in this chapter, mostly relatively innocent puberty-related stuff, but parts are a bit more detailed with regards to his sexuality, and some people might find it uncomfortable. To help you avoid this, I have highlighted 2 sentences in bold. You should stop reading at the first sentence, and it's safe to resume for the second sentence. We're not skipping.
No, we're not?
No, we're reading everything. So inviting, so enticing to play the part. I could play the wild mutation as a rock and roll star. I could do with the money, you know that I could. So I'm so wiped out with things as they are, you know that I should. I'll send my photograph to my honey and become like a regular superstar. Saturday, 20th of September, 1975. Over the next 3 weeks, Remus managed to fall into a somewhat more comfortable routine as he learnt to navigate his newfound feelings. Once upon a time, he might have simply tried to avoid Sirius, to withdraw and hide in the library or one of his little corners, but he'd learnt that this never worked in the end, especially when you shared a bedroom. And at any rate, he was far too big for most of his old cubbyholes now. So he simply tried to cope, and in trying he found that he could. Not that it was easy exactly, but he had so much else to worry about. On top of prefect duties, which usually held Remus up and down the castle, for patrol duties and meetings, it was an important year for their studies. With OWLs coming up, the teachers were loading them up with more work than ever, and there'd been a noticeable shift in the syllabus. In Transfiguration, they were learning concealment. In Charms, they practiced disarming. Potions was largely focusing on identifying and counteracting poisons, and defense against the dark arts seemed to be nothing but drill after drill of attack and defense spells. They were training for war, and everyone knew it. Care of Magical Creatures was a grim affair. Professor Kettleburn was a grumpy, barking old man with half his limbs missing in an eye patch. He didn't bring anything in for them to look at, or tell them stories of his encounters with fantastic beasts. He preferred to recount how he got all his various injuries, and it was always horrible. Remus tried to spin this in a positive way. At least without Ferox, there was one less distraction. There was no way he was going to develop a crush on crusty old Kettleburn.
Crusty Kettleburn.
Sirius was quite enough to contend with. Though he There's the bold. So here we go, guys. Though he managed to simply smile through his feelings most of the time, they seemed to surface at the most inopportune moments. He'd be reading a book, and there it was. Or completely alone in the library, and a memory would pop up, stirring up his insides. It left him often shaken, too hot, and confused. If this had been how James and Mary and Marlene and Peter and everyone else involved in the stupid snogging business had been feeling for the past 2 years, then Remus simply didn't know how any of them had gotten anything done. It seemed his mind and body were constantly at war. He wasn't stupid. He knew he was something of a late bloomer where that sort of thing had been concerned. The summer after he'd turned 13, Matron had called him into her office and asked him in the vaguest terms possible how much he knew about marital relations. He wasn't very sure how much he ought to know, and didn't want to look stupid, so he just said he knew everything. She nodded and told him to ask a male member of staff if he had any questions. Of course he never had. They also once had a talk from the local vicar about the sanctity of marriage and the sinful nature of acting on base urges, but Remus had been so mortified he'd blocked most of that out. Base urges. It wasn't something you were supposed to talk about seriously, at least not with other boys. He knew that much. Jokes were okay, at least you were safe in safe territory if you just teased each other, but you certainly couldn't ask questions. The other Marauders were ahead of him. Some nights, close to the full moon, he caught the scent of their lust, and heard their quiet, aching moments of frustration and shame as they fumbled under the bedsheets in the dark. It just embarrassed him. Of course, Remus did. Of course, he had. But that just felt like maintenance, with no meaning assigned to it other than brushing his teeth. Ever since the past summer, though, things in that department had changed, become more urgent, as if snogging Grant had activated him in some way, unleashed a great flood of feelings. Remus rarely thought about anything else. He was constantly on edge. For once, he was grateful for the billowing black robes they were required to wear at Hogwarts, but even though he often found himself having to stay seated longer than everyone else sometimes, trying to think neutral thoughts. Once he'd had to cover his lap with a particularly heavy book, simply because McGonagall had said wand work too many times. He felt changed on the inside. It was present in every moment, whether he was alone or in company. And serious. Why did it have to be serious? Okay, he knew why. It was the way his thin white school shirt hung off his back, the way his hair fell in his eyes so that he had to push it back, even though he never, ever tucked it behind his ears. His hands, his fucking eyes. It had been a very trying 3 weeks. Remus was grateful that this first full moon of the term had fallen on a weekend. It meant that he could sleep in and lounge around peacefully waiting for nightfall, rather than sitting through hours of lessons, bones aching on hard wooden seats. Saturday was also Quidditch practice day. Actually, ever since Jane became Quidditch captain, practice was almost every day, leaving Remus completely, blissfully undisturbed. He'd slept in most of the morning, then wandered downstairs for lunch before returning to the quiet of an empty bedroom. He read his book for a while, but feeling headachy and restless, soon gave up. He wished the moon would hurry up and come so he could get it over with. Waiting for it was the worst part. He closed his eyes, stretching out, then decided he was sick of lying down. He climbed off his bed and went to sit on the windowsill with a packet of cigarettes, the last he had for the summer, given to him by Grant as a leaving gift. Grant. If Grant were here at Hogwarts, would Remus himself feel the same about Sirius? Probably, he sighed to himself. And Grant was so canny at that sort of thing he'd work it out right away. Maybe he'd have some advice. If only he could call him or even write a letter. But he was only allowed to send owls to Matron. And what if she read it? Remus wished he had the compact mirrors James and Sirius had. Though how on earth he would explain them to Grant, he had no idea. He finished his first cigarette and started on another. It was soothing. Weed was better. He'd had some after his last full moon, but he hadn't seen anyone at Hogwarts smoking it. He was on the outs with the smoking set anyway, as he was no longer supplying. The past summer's distractions had cost him in more ways than one. Evening was drawing in and Remus's stomach began to rumble. He tried to eat light on full moons, anticipating the pain which sometimes made him sick. In the days afterwards, he would be ravenous and could easily manage 3 or 4 plates a meal. He was just about to get up and go down when the door opened. Peter, James, and Sirius walked in with curious looks on their faces. James looked very serious and quite cautious, as if he had to deliver some news and wasn't sure how Remus would take it. Remus knew it couldn't be bad news, though, because Sirius was grinning from ear to ear, showing every one of his perfect pearly white teeth. Peter was wringing his hands as usual, but he too had a small, wicked smile, the look he always had when they were in the middle of a particularly devious prank. "Oh God," Remus said before James could speak. "What now? Why aren't you at Quidditch?" "No Quidditch today," Sirius said, still grinning like a maniac. The energy coming off him was electric, burning hot. He was clearly extremely excited about something. "Where have you been then?" Remus asked, choosing to look at James instead to keep his voice level. "We've been practicing something else," Peter burst out, biting his bottom lip. Remus leaned back on the windowsill and looked at James again, raising a questioning eyebrow. James swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Then cleared his throat. "Moony," he said, "you may remember we had an idea in 3rd year." "You have ideas all the time, Potter. Be specific," he said irritably, lighting his 3rd cigarette. His shoulders hurt, and his neck. He wasn't in the mood for games on a full moon, and they should know this by now. To help you with the... I know you said we shouldn't, James ran his hands through his hair. "But we'd already got so far with it, and, look, I'm sorry. We're sorry. But spit it out," Remus sighed, exhaling smoke. James looked panicked. He glanced at Sirius, then looked at his feet and mumbled, "We've become animagus." "What?" "Oh, for Merlin's sake," Sirius said, stepping forward. "Look, Remus." And with that, Sirius promptly transformed into a very large black dog, and Remus fell off the window ledge in shock.
Now, see, that's a good chapter to end on. They finally became...
They did it! They did it! Yay! They did it!
That's right, Remus. Be happy.
That's right.
Your friends just dedicated 2 years to becoming animals for you. Cliffhanger indeed.
I know. What are all these...
Yeah, I was following this conversation here about...
the job being cursed?
Yeah. And I think it might be an oversight, because I think Lucas is right. I think it happened prior to this, wouldn't it? Before Voldemort developed his Death Eaters.
Yeah, no. Voldemort cursed the job.
Yeah. So
before, yeah.
So maybe it's either an oversight or we just haven't heard a lot about it, so maybe he just hasn't noticed.
I think it's on purpose, because it's not important to this story.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe it's just that Lupin didn't notice, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it happens long before this, so there should be a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher every year.
Yeah, I think Katie's right. I just don't think it's a focus. I don't think it has anything important to the story. So it just isn't...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's very important in the Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
But...
because I think Katie's also right. I think Dumbledore does mention murders, but I don't think they know that it's him yet. But at this point in the story, they know.
Oh, I think that's Voldemort?
Yeah. I think Dumbledore suspects him of it, but there's no, like, proof that it was Tom.
It's like Snape knows it was Potter, but he cannot prove it.
Yeah.
Dumbledore knows, but he...
At this point in the story, though, where we are with the Marauders, everyone knows.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they're literally talking about a war coming. Voldemort is out there. He's out there doing Voldemort things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's not important to Lupin. Ferox was more important to Lupin.
Yes. Now, if Ferox was a defense against the dark arts teacher,
we would know.
We would know.
We would have paid attention for
Instead
sure.
of crusty old
Kettleburn. And Lupin admits, like, even if Grant were at Hogwarts, he'd still be feeling it for Sirius.
That's right. Can't compete with the serious black smile or the way his hair falls in his face.
Man.
What?
Man. Things are going to just get intense. I'm looking at the next few chapter titles.
Oh, yeah. I mean, next chapter. Next chapter is going to be, well, it'll probably just be Lupin waking up and then them telling him about what happened. I wonder how fierce Lupin is going to be the first time.
The next chapter is called Mooney and Co. So I think it's going to be their first Animagus adventure. Yeah. And then just beautiful, wishing and hoping, jealous moon. It was the night before Christmas.
So we have some actual titles now. That's interesting.
Aftermath.
Now we can kind of predict.
January. Hurt feelings. Dung bombs and broom cupboards. Sweet 16. Morning after. Stalemate. The week before. I don't know. I'm just boundaries. New normal. Spilling secrets.
Don't ruin everything.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. And yeah, there really isn't a focus on the teacher. The only one we heard about was Ferox, and that's because Lupin had feelings. They didn't know were feelings yet.
Yeah, no, and we've talked about this before, where the teachers, some of the teachers, they're not a focus because you're trying not to step on toes with how they're written, like Dumbledore and McGonagall, because of who they are. That's why I also think like Hagrid's not really in the story either, because you don't want to write the character poorly.
Yeah.
And catch flack. Yeah. It's not spoilers, it's Teasers. Yeah. No, we don't have time for more. We've got about 10 minutes for some discussion, some more chit chat, but we really don't have time to read another chapter, unfortunately.
Slughorn is mentioned very briefly, though.
Yeah, Slughorn. Well, I think Slughorn because Lily was important to Lily was important to Slughorn. Snape and potions. I think Slughorn of all the teachers is probably the most relevant to the story.
Yeah, I think it was needed to put him in there, but I think that's why it was so brief.
Yeah. But he's really the only teacher that has the most, I don't want book time. But I think it's because canon, real character.
Yeah. Which I think is the most risky because Slughorn is such a strong personality.
Yeah, but you could sprinkle him in for 5 minutes and it's easy to like broad stroke Slughorn.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not Slughorn having a conversation with Harry and Dumbledore like in book 6. It's Slughorn just teaching a class.
Yeah.
You could kind of copy and paste that out of the first class he has in Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah, that's true.
And it makes sense to have Slughorn there because you have Snape and Lily and the potions dynamic, and you've got it. Potions is a great place to have that dynamic build between Snape and the Marauders.
Speaking of Snape, where is Snape?
Oh, where is he? The last thing we heard was Lily asking a question about him.
Yeah.
About Harry, James hexing him or something.
And I mean, I get he's off doing his Death Eater thing at this point. But you would think he'd still be there to pick on Lupin. Seriously,
there's gonna have to. It's gonna have to build up intense in this book, or this year, because Sirius almost kills him.
Yeah, there's gotta be more prank action happening.
He's not hanging around Lily as much.
Yeah,
that's true. He's planning something. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, we really didn't see much of him at all in year 4.
But
so as far as this whole rivalry,
I feel like that might have been a mistake on the author's part, because him and Lily are still like cool until
the thing happened.
Which is this year, right?
Yeah, it's gonna happen this year.
So, yeah.
I mean, they're cool in 5th year, but they're having issues because she's constantly telling him she doesn't like his friends and stuff.
I think the author might have did the whole thing too early.
Maybe.
Or not gradually enough.
I am also wondering.
I guess I would have liked to see more of the Snape Marauder conflict. Is my biggest issue with it.
Well, part of me is
thinking.
Well, because in the books it's such a big deal.
Yeah.
How terrible it was for Snape, and he hates James so much. James was so mean to him, and blah blah blah. But maybe we don't see it because maybe James is like doing this stuff to Snape like on his own when Lupin isn't around, so Lupin's not seeing it. I don't know.
I did like all the pranks too. I did like them, but maybe it's same vein as like why they don't mention the teachers as much. Maybe she doesn't want to miswrite, or she. I don't remember if it's described their gender.
Miss Bean
the
King
author
or whatever.
If the author was afraid to miswrite Snape,
I think that's possible.
Because you notice
trying to be careful not to write him incorrectly.
Yeah,
because something.
He was the only character from canon Harry Potter that's really in the story.
Like deeply in the story. Yeah, because Lily isn't present in the Harry Potter series. She did.
Yeah. I mean, Lupin and Sirius, but
Lupin's the main character, you know what I mean? And you get enough of Sirius and Lupin in the main novels that you can get a sense of who they are.
Well, that and
even Pettigrew,
this is a fanfic of Sirius and Lupin, so you can assume those two characters are the ones that are going to not fall into the canon category.
Yeah.
And I mean, all of them. The rest doesn't have to, but the fact that all of it kind of works with canon,
I wonder
what makes the story good.
I wonder if she's a little nervous writing Snape too, just because Snape is such an important character in the series as a whole.
That's what I mean. I think she might be a little bit
and people are very emotional about Snape.
Well, you are. Okay, I kind of am too, but on the different.
Most people are very. Snape is the most important character in the series, other than Harry. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And people feel very strongly about him. They either love him or they hate him. Snape causes reactions in people when they talk about him. The Great Snape Debate is a thing for a reason, and I think that's daunting to try to write that.
Yeah. I feel like it goes Harry, Snape, Dumbledore, Voldemort.
Dumbledore, Voldemort?
Yeah. maybe you could argue third place between them, but I think Dumbledore.
Dumbledore has more of a personal impact on Harry.
That's what I mean. So I think he would be my number 3 for most impactful characters in the story.
I don't know, though. You don't have a story without Snape and Voldemort.
You don't really without Dumbledore either.
Yeah, you could. If Snape hadn't have told Voldemort, Voldemort would have never killed Harry's parents.
Well, yeah, but then what if Dumbledore wasn't there to keep Snape on the leash and then...
Yeah. I know. Dumbledore and Voldemort, yeah.
I feel like Voldemort is kind of doing his own thing, but Snape and Dumbledore outweigh him because they're kind of pulling strings.
Yeah, that's true. That's
my thought.
It's like the three, Harry, Dumbledore, and Snape are like in their bubble here, the hero bubble, the good guy bubble, and then you got Voldemort doing the bad guy thing over here, and Snape kind of doing his back and forth thing.
Yeah,
but
bubble hopping.
Yeah, if Snape hadn't told Voldemort to save Lily, Harry wouldn't have survived. Yep. Exactly.
So yeah.
Either way, I do kind of wish there was more Snape in the story.
Right, but it's tricky as an author, so I understand.
But if she wrote Snape and it wasn't coming across very well, then it'd be like, I don't like this.
And yeah, Snape is definitely the human form of gray area. And that's the thing about Snape. Like, that's why the Snape debate is just an ongoing thing, is because you can literally argue for both sides and you could win both sides all the time.
You can successfully argue either way.
He is just that gray area.
That's what's so great about it.
However you interpret one thing.
There is so much story left. We are on the next chapter is what did I say? 74, 75?
Yeah.
The next chapter is 76 out of 188.
Yeah. Didn't we do the math? This is as long as all 7 Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
Chapter wise.
I'm pretty sure.
Page number wise, we don't know, but
I think so. Yeah. I think she's written Snape pretty well. I would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't think she writes Snape more than she has to.
I would agree.
I keep saying she because Miss, but
the other thing too is
the author chooses.
Not only do you have to write Snape, but you have to write Snape from Lupin's perspective, which is different than Harry's, right? Like he still hates him, but the relationship is different. So I think she does do a very good job of it. I think Snape interacts with James solo more than he interacts with Lupin. I think that's got to be what it is, because Snape hates James. There's a reason why he hates him so much. It's got to crescendo up into where he saves his life.
Could it be that it was just Snape's worst memory that just made Snape hate him? That, along with the fact that Lily chooses James, and just that alone.
Well, I wonder when Snape's first memory occurs, has the thing with the Whomping Willow already happened? Or does that happen later?
I think that happens later, doesn't it? Or is that 5th year it happens?
Happens in 5th year.
So it must happen before, I think. Because it happens after their OWLs.
We had this whole thing about when exactly did the event occur in a previous stream. We did this.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, and I don't remember what we said, but that's true. He's teenage Snape.
Yeah.
So she could definitely, there's room for
interpretation.
Of
how he would have acted. Yeah.
That being said, it's Snape's worst memory, combination with him saving his life, and all the bullying, all the rest of it. So I think it just comes to a head at some point.
I'm wondering if just the few pranks we saw accompanied with
those two big
very impactful things that happens. If his hatred for James was more quality of the horrors than quantity.
This is true. It could be quality versus quantity. Absolutely.
I think that's left open for interpretation.
Yep.
Never really.
And you know that it's going to start in year 5. He's going to lose Lily.
Yeah.
He's going to hate James. And then in year 7, James is going to get Lily. And I think it's going to...
And he's not even going to be able to, like, really hate the guy because he saved his life. So it's like this internal conflict.
Oh, he hates him.
Builds up.
He just hates him.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying it's like, I shouldn't. He saved my life, but I just...
Saved my life, stole my girl.
So perfect.
What a D.
How dare you be such a good guy, Potter.
Potter. Awful.
And on that note of the gray area that is Snip,
we must take our leave.
I think that is the time to end the stream. But this was really fun. This was a great time.
This was a nice bunch of chapters. Yeah. Lots of good reading.
Great discussions. And some great chapters.
Absolutely.
And we left on a cliffhanger, but a good cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Not just a very sad
one, we got like Pupper. We got Pupper serious. Yeah. That was great.
Doggy serious. All right, everyone. So
see you later.
Take care.
Bye. Have a good week and all that stuff. We'll see you next time.
Good weekend, good week. We will be back Thursday. All right. And we are out.